Mike's Daily Podcast.
FF episode 1394 at Mike Matthews Broadcasting from Cafe Anyway, located somewhere in Podcastro Valleymont at the last place on earth. Today, Shelly Shuhart, Floyd the Floorman, John Deere the Engineer. We'll get to the segment called People Get Stuck on Stupid, because there's some news stories that have to do with people doing exactly that.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
And when I do my podcast for you, I am so happy that you're listening. And then I meet someone with
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Millions of listeners across the country, and he's got a really big name, and he has all kinds of fortune and fame. And he is broadcasting out of the radio station I work at during the week. He came in today, usually out of Washington, D.C. And, you know, he was here for some kind of San Francisco
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Political thing, circuit court thing. I don't know what's going on, but I met this guy, huge conservative talk show host.
Mike's
Met him today.
Daily
Very nice guy.
Podcast.
And he just has a huge team surrounding him. He was able to do his show from my radio station, but all the people doing all the engineering and everything was back in DC. And he just, it is like, hardly has to, all he has to do is talk like I'm doing now and say smart things, which I'm not doing now. Look who just walked in.
Hello, Mike Matthews. It's Shelly Shuhart, the jump supervisor. How was it?
His name rhymes with Blewett.
What?
He's a guy who's, I don't know. He's not like the most well-known conservative talk show host, but he's definitely got a lot of followers. He's written a lot of books. He's read a lot of books. And look who else walked in. Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Floorman. And this is John Deere the Engineer. Mike, I have to tell you that sounds like a very intricate process of having someone broadcasting out of one location, yet his team is in another location. Yes, it's very confusing. I can't even begin to understand it, but yes, it requires all kinds of technology today. So the human voice is so easy to transmit now via the internets. And as you can hear my voice through the internets, other people can use that as well. And it just become radios, even though it's shrunk down to the size of a penny.
And here's today's podcast picture.
And that's about how much they pay people that work in radio, unless you're a huge name. But yeah, it's shrunk down. It's so easy to do now, and it's so, the technology takes over most of it to get the human. But nothing will replace the human voice. I know some newspapers have tried to post podcasts where a computer reads their news stories, and that can be almost acceptable. You can hear the human, this computer voice sounding like a human voice. It's got like all the pauses and whatnot, but it doesn't, there's something there. You need your like NPR reporters, your Audrey Cornish, your Lakshmi Singh, and all the other names. You can't have a normal name if you work in NPR, just so you know. National Public Radio. The podcast picture today is of a couple. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're even still married, but they were getting married in San Francisco, and they took some wedding pictures right by a cable car, and I happened to be walking by and took that picture. This picture is probably from 5 years ago, so it'd be interesting to know if they're married, if they're happily married still, if they have a bunch of kids now. Who knows? But there is, and they're far enough away from the camera that facial recognition won't get them on the internet, so I don't think they'll have to worry that I've just posted a picture of them without their permission. But in a sense, them being on a public street, they already gave themselves permission to be photographed. And the bride was so lovely, I think everyone should see her. And the groom looked well as well. So see that picture now at mikesdailypodcast.com. I was walking Basil the Boxer yesterday throughout Podcastro Valley. It was a wonderful walk. The weather was so much cooler yesterday, so cool. And my dog can handle the cool weather, not so much the hot weather, but we were walking around And we stopped at the Pet Food Express and a couple other places. He is so well loved by so many people in Castro Valley. People going, "Oh, is that a boxer? Oh, I love boxers. I grew up with boxers." I hear that constantly. I grew up with boxers. And so Basil got a lot of love as we walked around. As we stopped at Pet Food Express, the lady that runs that place, young lady, she says she's worked there 11 years, but she barely looks 30. She is like a tattoo parlor queen looking. Lots of tattoos. Such a beauty. And she was there talking. She said, "Hey, I saw you and your dog walking one day in Podcastro Valley." And I said, "Yeah, we do that a lot." So we're well known. We are celebrities. Basil the Boxer and I. For we walk everywhere in Podcastro Valley. And even the hot Pet Food Express manager knew us. We felt so special. Not as big as someone with a huge radio audience that publishes books and apparently has to testify at some kind of circuit court thing in San Francisco. I don't know what he's doing. That's why he's here, though, instead of DC, but not that. Anyway, Mike'sDailyPodcast.com. Here we are at Cafe Anyway. The website is where you can find all the past podcast pictures and hear interviews that I've done with interesting people. I did have a conservative guy from the Hoover Institute one time, Nick Sikorsky, who recently met Rupert Murdoch. But you can hear those past interviews and musicians that I've spoken to, see the past podcast pictures, and you can help out the show too at Mike'sDailyPodcast.com by shopping on Amazon through that link there at Mike'sDailyPodcast.com. That helps us out, and there's also the PayPal too, and you'll become an Inglorious Mike's Daily Podcaster and get a special greeting from all the Cafe Anyway characters. And now the segment called,
people get stuck on stupid, you know what I mean?
So True. Well, first off, when you say stupid, you got to think of Ann Coulter. She has suggested she was targeted and forced to move seats on a Delta Airlines flight for political reasons. I am going to probably buy Delta airline tickets because I need to get to Florida, and they seem to be the cheapest and the most convenient to where I'm going. But the right-wing commentator Ann Coulter sent a series of tweets to the airlines yesterday after being moved from an aisle seat with extra legroom to a window seat, claiming she was not offered an explanation for what happened. And on Tuesday, she shared a text conversation she claims to have had with a Delta employee, in which it appears Coulter is told, quote, "Someone noticed her and just wanted to be a jerk and make her life miserable." And then, beware of @Delta Republicans texts from a flight attendant. It was political. @Delta still won't give a reason. She wrote, sharing the messages. She said she screen grabbed. Okay. In a flurry of tweets following the incident in which Coulter was moved, she claimed the airline's Twitter feed was run by social justice warriors and suggested the cabin crew acted like prison guards, also griping about being offered a $30 refund for her ticket. $30? It cost me $10,000 of my time to pre-select the seat I wanted, she wrote on social media. But Coulter's suggestion that Republicans in particular should be wary of using the airline is somewhat surprising, given Delta CEO Edward Bastian has previously donated money to the GOP. Meanwhile, the Ukraine, Russian-backed rebels fighting against Kiev, announced on today the creation of a new state, said would take the place of Ukraine and have its capital in their territory. Actually, this happened yesterday. The proposed country, which has no chance of getting off the ground, would be founded after a referendum and called Malorossia, a Tsarist era, meaning Little Russia, that once described most of the area covered by modern-day Ukraine. A constitution presented by rebel leader Alexander Zakharchenko said the representatives from the insurgent self-declared Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics and other regions have agreed to declare the establishment of a new state, which is the successor of Ukraine, and that the rebel bastion Donetsk would become the capital, while Kiev would be reduced to the status of a historical cultural center. That's going on there if you were flying there. I know someone that lived there for a while. and has many interesting stories to tell, which I can't remember any of them. But for a president with historically low poll numbers, Donald Trump can at least find solace in the fact that Hillary Clinton is doing worse, according to Bloomberg. Trump's 2016 Democratic rival is viewed favorably by just 39% of Americans in the latest poll. The former Secretary of State has always been a polarizing figure, but the survey shows she's been lost popularity among those who voted for her in November. More than a fifth of Clinton voters say they have an unfavorable view of her. By comparison, just 8% of likely Clinton voters felt that way in the final Bloomberg poll before the election. Samsung is launching its Bixby Al-powered voice AI, which looks like Al if you don't realize that that letter is actually an I instead of a lowercase l. The AI-powered voice assistant. It's going to be on the Galaxy S8. Samsung, it's called Bixby. It's their version of Siri. That they showed it off in March. Then they released it only in its home market of South Korea in May. And now it's going to be coming to the States. Bixby. Why Bixby? Is that after Bill Bixby, who played the Incredible Hulk on television? And who was also the father on The Courtship of Eddie's Father? Two of country music's biggest stars, finally, Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, were on stage and made their final performance together. And they've done duets together like Real Love and Islands in the Stream, That Is What We Are. No, it's not that song by P. Diddy. Rogers, who is retiring from touring, says his final performance with Parton will be part of an all-star farewell show to be held at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena October 25th. The two have been performing together for more than 30 years. As we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley. I had the chance to meet Kenny Rogers once, and I couldn't get up early enough to get to the studio to meet him. However, I was here early enough to meet Blue It today. Next show, it's going to be Benita the Disgruntled Fiddle Player and the Brewmaster. Anyway, have a wonderful day.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com.
Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com.
See you tomorrow. Bye!